All right, let's move on and let's talk about possibly, is this the best team in history for the Iowa State Cyclones with the women's Cyclones here? The bar is set very high for Iowa State this year. I mean, they had 28 wins last season. They bring back a pretty decent amount of players. 4 of the players who started 30 or more games are back, including the All-American Ashley Jones, who averaged 20.3 points and 9 rebounds last season. Iowa State is in a good spot. Just like I mentioned earlier when we started talking about Texas, I think Texas just has the inch on being the front runner in the Big 12, but Iowa State's right behind them, Steve.
Yeah, and then could there be 2 women's teams from Iowa in the Final Four?
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, I mean, we've been gushing about the SEC, but again, the Big 12, top to bottom, you compete every night in the Big 12. There's not going to be any nights off. You can argue in the SEC, there are nights that you can't totally mail it in, but there are some nights that maybe you can rest some players, maybe not play them 30 minutes, maybe play them 23, 24 minutes, whatever, get your bench involved. That's not necessarily the case in the Big 12 as much. Ashley Jones coming back is just huge for Iowa State's tournament things. They won 28 games last year. And honestly, a lot of people think they're going to win more than that. What is going to stop Iowa State from surprising Texas?
That's about it. I mean, that's really the only thing, right? Texas won 29 games last year. So who wins more games? Who has the higher seed? Maybe it might not even be Texas. Maybe both these teams are just fantastic. And okay, one of them gets the nod at the Big 12. But I mean, they'll probably be on different sides of the bracket once we get to the March Madness.
Yeah, and then again, guard play. Subliminal message.
I don't think we said that on this show yet today. So there it is. That one. If you didn't say it,
I did with Iowa. Ironically.
Okay, good. Iowa. No, I was just saying, because if we waited 50 minutes until you said it, that was a record.
So maybe it's an Iowa bias here as far as guard play goes. But yeah. Emily Ryan distributes the ball well. She has great court vision. She's a great defender. Having a good point guard in the women's game may be more important than having a consistent inside presence and a dangerous outside shooter. I really think in the women's game, everything goes through that point guard position. And that's why you see a lot of players rotate in and out of that position based on matchups, whoever the opponents might be, because the way that the offensive flows tend to happen, it seems to come from the point guard position in the women's game. Not that it doesn't in the men's game, but I think more so that every team wants to have that point guard that they can depend on day in, day out. And I think they have that in Ryan. They did bring in, I believe her first name is Stephanie. I think it's Stephanie Soares. She was a 2-time NAIA National Player of the Year, is transferring in. And you can debate all you want about NCAA and then Division II, Division III, NAIA. Sometimes, there's situations where a player needs to stay close to home or play for a smaller program for whatever reason. And until they mature emotionally, physically, not everybody develops at the same rate. But if you're the National Player of the Year at any level, that means that you can play basketball. And if she can fit in and start contributing right away, I think Iowa State, literally, if they're not in front, they're right behind Texas, breathing down their neck.
Yeah.
And that's gonna make for a really interesting February as these two teams, the intensity builds up and they can't afford to lose to anybody. It'll be interesting to see how they hold up going into the Big 12 tournament and setting up their seeding for the NCAAs.
In the major conferences, I think that'll probably be the closest 1-2 punch when it comes to who will be the first place, who will be second place. We know we talk about, South Carolina, Tennessee, and the SEC. We talk about, we had co-champions in the Big Ten last year. I don't think it's going to be as close as Texas and Iowa State. Now, there's some other teams in the Big 12 that are still great too. Like, we're not going to count out Baylor and other teams as well. But I think that we're going to see Texas and Iowa State battling it out for the Big 12 for the very top before we head into March Madness.
We originally had Baylor in as one of the things we wanted to talk about, but I think I just beat you down enough with Iowa State that we substituted them. That's not a snub of Baylor by any means. I think that they're a great program, but I just think Iowa State, this is their moment in time where they could really have a magical season where again, we keep saying if everything falls into place, they don't need to have a lot of luck. If they just play their game and all the players stay healthy and play to the best of their abilities, it could be a magical season there for Iowa State.
Completely agree.